What was really interesting though was that the first exercise I asked them to do was to interview someone, kind of conduct a semi-structured interview with someone that they didn't know at all, and preferably someone from a different race or different background, not by race or class or and different gender if possible, and interview them about sort of what their interests were, why they came to Stellenbosch to study here, and what they liked or disliked about sociology, so something like that. And these were just kind of key broad themes. They had to interview each other for 12 minutes. Okay, there wasn't much time, but 12 minutes one side, and then they swapped around rows, and the other person would interview the first person. What was really interesting about, I asked them to make the interview as conversational as possible. So although there were these key issues for them to frame the interview, the emphasis was on trying to listen hard to what the other person was saying, and then pick up on issues which that person said and ask questions around those to make it more conversational. And then to write about the essay afterwards, to write about the research afterwards in terms of what they'd found in the research about the other person, but also in terms of some of the tutors are in here, spoke very highly of it. I mean, really enjoyed it. We're very surprised. Some of the interviews I think were hard going, but in general, people were very surprised at how much they'd learned and what kind of relationships they'd been able to establish with people that they never would dream of going around with before. Now, it's quite interesting because this was, if you like, forced integration. I mean, forced in the sense that part of the course, and saying to people that could you do this exercise and hang about with people you don't know very well. But they found that a really enjoyable and stimulating experience. And of course, partly why it's so stimulating is because from a pedagogic point of view, from a point of view of teaching sociology, that it's very important. We're going to talk about contemporary South Africa and say education in contemporary South Africa, that we encourage people to learn from others about their experiences and their constructions of education, because education is so different and is so divided that it only makes sense we have different points of view being articulated. So people find that very useful exercise, and it sort of gives the line a bit to the thing about forced integration. Another thing I want to talk about, which came out quite strongly, is the idea of race as race thinking, and I think this is really interesting in the course. I've got this really shocking picture I'm not showing you now, and I'm not don't want to mention any names here actually, but the two people whose parents are of this child are actually in here. I'm not going to mention any names because I want to make them on a guilt trip and anything outside of them, like putting people on guilt trips. But I mean, don't you find this amazing? Here is someone. I can't believe when I saw this. He's brushing his teeth. I mean, it's probably difficult to see from the back. But he's brushing his teeth, and look, and on the wall, on the ceiling, and it's kind of, how do you do that? Sorry. Like this, okay? And brushing his teeth, but there's nothing to rest his back. So cleaning on, to the sink. And with his walls, he could really injure himself badly. And I'm not going to mention any names, but it's you! Yes! I'm about to do it, damn it! This is him! Then our chair, and there, over there, trying to hide. So, I mean, this is problematic. So how does this relate to race thinking? Well, it's kind of, it's very difficult to think about thinking, actually, because thinking is kind of involves. Well, if you've got to think about thinking, you have to make a paradigmatic shift in order to take your thinking as the object of thinking in a way. And so what you have to do here, presumably something like this might be quite disturbing before the popularization of photographs, and particularly photographs that can be rotated and things like this. It might look quite disturbing. And so we have to, when we're looking at race thinking, we have to sort of make this paradigmatic shift. So because race thinking almost precludes the possibility of race. They are thinking about race, I would want to suggest, because when the argument is thinking about almost like an unconscious tendency to think racially and to use race as a lens through which to interpret the social world, and this is certainly came out in a number of conversations we're having, and how simply thinking racially can preclude possibilities and limit possibilities of interacting with other people, because you tend to see people, your friends, or associates with people of the same race. that's just, this is a serious problem, and certainly was illustrated very powerfully in the studies, the autobiographical pieces from UK Sudan, which I've referred to. One of the things that was really interesting about this was this idea of race thinking is very popular amongst students, actually, amongst pretty well older students. They find it really, really interesting and sort of resonates a bit with some of their concerns and issues. But at the same time, the popularity of it slightly racialized itself. So it was very interesting that we got into some discussions about, is race simply the product of race thinking? Where people are thinking, if only we could stop thinking racially, then race wouldn't exist, and it wouldn't be problematic. And that was a position that was kind of articulated and opposed by some black students and college students in the lecture theatre who argued that race is more substantial. You can't think it away. And if you do think it away, that's seriously problematic because people are disadvantaged in terms of material realities which are related to race. And so there's a really interesting kind of issue around that. And what I want to suggest in a way is that I want to argue that we shouldn't throw babies out with bathwater and with bathwater and you as well. And what we should do is to kind of try and hold on to both, because I think that the idea of race thinking has got very important insights. How people race thinking can preclude possibilities of friendships, relationships in an institution like this. And what we're trying to do, to some extent, is to open up possibilities for people to think it's normal and natural to mix across lines of race. So we shouldn't, just because we see people in mixed relationships, you go put them into things like this. This is natural. Not for myself doing that. That's really problematic, and sometimes I hate myself for that, and self-loathing, and I feel really guilty. But that does happen. But what we need to do, I think, is to try and hold. I want to sort of try and illustrate this bit. Try and hold on to both. Race is a material reality, but it's also race thinking is in some ways can help to produce it. It can also help to make argue to make sense of it. But I'll talk about this in a minute. Okay, so thinking about race as both materiality and a symbolic construction in contemporary South Africa, I think that this is based on kind of the idea that the racialization, the term racialization is really interesting because it makes race into a verb, rather than now something which is produced and spaces are produced to racialize. And also it carries the idea that I think that of symbolic construction as well as material construction. So that there's a certain sense in which spaces like Kamandi, for example, construct racialize the black space. That not only is it racialized as black space because the vast majority of people living there are designated black, but also because the way it's symbolically constructed, there's certain associations made with Kamandi, which are very, very different from associations made with Central Stellenbosch, with the university here. And it's interesting, I think, again, to hold on to both of those things. It's not either or, it's kind of both in a way. And what I want to do, just very briefly, sort of going back to my old computer because I love it so much, is just to talk a little bit about these two highly differentiated spaces, Kaimandi just up the road, and here as kind of research, participatory research, which I've been involved in doing, and here in Stellenbosch University, and sort of some research that I was doing in Kaimandi High School, and I was invited by someone called Yohari Harris, who's an African American teacher in the school, and what I thought would be interesting to do would be to find out from young people in Kaimandi how they perceive this university. They're born in Stellenbosch, living 15 minutes away from it, and how do they see the university as part of as featuring in their lives? Do they have some sense of ownership of the university, or not? How do they think about it? And given these two very different kind of cultural environments, and so then do grade 12 students come under students construct the university, and what basically we did, we conducted focus group discussions with grade 12 students and around interest topics, aspirations, and the views of Stellenbosch University, and a very common discourse was that they all thought that Stellenbosch was a great university in terms of academic standards. I mean, pretty well everyone said that, actually, and so looked up to it. But also, they said, when I asked them, could you imagine coming here, the language was the issue. They kept on saying that, that, well, it'd be difficult, because of the language, etc. But they were very sort of polite. I mean, it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't sort of angry about it at all, just almost like apologetic of it, actually. And I think it was because, I was conducting the interview, a white person, and also, a professor at the university as well. So, but then the Yohari Harris, she started asking them a really interesting question about what about the social side of the university? How do you think you'd find that? And then one man, I've just taken a little bit of his response here, but he started speaking at some length. And when he was speaking, everyone was listening intently. Before that, there was quite a lot of joking and laughter, but this just seemed to be really serious, actually. The tone changed quite dramatically. I'll just read through this. He said, he has a friend in one of the residences in Stellenbosch. He says, I go there to res at the university, as a friend, sometimes with him, and when he goes there, he buys something, and we're all surrounded by all these, let's suppose, white people that are speaking in Afrikaans, and then it's a bit intimidating, it happens automatically. I don't choose to be intimidated, but I don't know if it's me or it happens to everyone, but I tend to get a bit intimidated being surrounded by white people, and in one place and being the only black or two blacks, it gets a bit intimidating. So I think culture-wise, I would prefer to go to UCT in terms of social life, where there are lots of diversity, there are lots of people. I prefer to go over Stellenbosch, and I think that was the tone of that was very almost apologetic in a way. He mentioned repeats intimidating about 5 times. So clearly he feels very uncomfortable about it, and I think it raises issues both about the numbers thing, there is a problem that Stellenbosch is still, in terms of numbers, still predominantly white, but also in relation to how he's symbolically constructing Stellenbosch as well, feeling like an outsider. And this was cut across, the previous conversations about language was just sort of, they were started with lots of fun and didn't really mean very much. But this, everyone went quite quiet when he said this, and then more people started to say what he said, and so people actually find it quite difficult. Now, it's really, really important, I think, as part of transformation policy, if we started to think about transformation seriously, it's very important to go and do research. Transformation needs to be informed by research with people from Kamandi. It also needs to be informed by research on how different students, in terms of race, class, gender, diverse students, actually experience the university. Okay, we can't expect senior management to be responsible for transformation. Transformation is too serious an issue for senior management. It has to be informed by research, participatory research, which encourages people, which addresses people as experts and makes their lives and identities the key issue we're discussing. It has to be informed by that. And just very quickly, because I know time is really running out because I've taken so long, but so just and this, he's speaking not from point of view of power, but just from marginality. Language becomes linked with race, excluding classes. And I think what he does is almost to concretize and contextualize white domination. And I find that very powerful. In a way, often we talk in the transformation charter about white institutional culture, ways which sounds very abstract. I'm not quite sure what people are going to do, white institutional culture. Whereas he's provided a very concrete example of how he feels intimidated. And this senior management need to know about this. They need to develop a kind of way of thinking which encourages this kind of research. Just moving on quickly here, I just want to refer to Megan's research. It's not going to be very long, just split up to 3 minutes, that's all right. Megan's research is wonderful. I wish I had more time to do it justice. She did research in the residences here, well, 6 residences altogether. sorry, 3 residents, but 6 focus group discussions she did in these residences. And what she was interested in was trying to do research in focus group discussions where she paid particular attention to the sort of dynamics of the research encounter. She saw focus group discussions not simply as means of eliciting or extracting information from people, but rather opportunities for people to participate in a discussion around issues of concern to them, and particularly around how they understood living in a residence, what's like being in a residence and living in a residence. The residences she went to, 2 of them are still very predominantly white residents. I think we've got about 8% of students are white students in the residences, in spite of the residence placement policies. But one of the residences she went to was a residence which was relatively mixed. In fact, had, I think, only 40% of white students. Our students were white, and was also mixed in terms of gender, which is very unusual because most of the residences here are gender segregated as well as tend to be quite white dominated. So she was organised these focus discussions, and she was really interested in sort of looking at. She asked people to select themselves on the basis of friendship groups. Okay, so she actually went to someone in the residence and said, "Could you choose 3 or 4 people that you're really friendly with? You see to the kind of friendship group." And I'm just going to refer to a couple of them quite quickly. When she was writing up these pieces, the first one was a focus group discussion she conducted in a pseudonym called Blueberg, and this had a reputation. It was called the Ladies' Residence, and she talks about again. She went there with a pizza. She tried to bring you food and drink and facilitate interactions, and that's a sociable thing to do. But she actually felt a bit sort of frightened about, well, do ladies and Blueberg eat pizzas and things, but she finally did actually, and they're kind of quite nice. So what she does is she does a brilliant way of writing up the research. She does a kind of general illustrative summary of the relational dynamics of the group. So how do people interact with each other? What kind of people do some people dominate the conversation? Is there lots of agreements and disagreements? How does the conversation work out? How do we see it hurt, etc. And then she does a kind of presentation analysis of the key themes as they emerge in the focus group discussions. What kind of issues and themes come up? With the Blueberg students, it's really, really interesting. She found that they're all 2nd, 3rd generation students. Okay, so the parents have been here. There's 3 students. They're all white students, and what's very interesting because 2 of them had black roommates, but they hadn't invited them along, and that is actually fascinating in a way because although they're quite friendly with them, the kind of conversations that they had with each other, I think, were only possible within a kind of group like this because they relied upon each other for contributions to the stories that they're telling. So all of them had their parents and grandparents, and they saw themselves following in their footsteps. And they'd sort of, for a long time, they'd known that they're coming to Stellenbosch. They'd been at, when they were growing up, and they used to come for holidays to Stellenbosch and visit the old haunts where the mothers and fathers had been. And some of these old haunts were love spots, where the mothers and fathers had scarfed or something, you got to know each other and gone out, and it's almost like drawing maps and of in terms of not racialized maps, but maps in terms of love and love spots that they drew. And what was really interesting was that there's lots of laughter and enjoyment, real enjoyment actually, that they expressed about being in this residence and how they shared the same sort of some moments, mutual recognition. And one of them remembers getting Stellenbosch socks when she was 6 years old, and everyone laughed at that and stuff. And then invoking tradition, so they sort of saw tradition as being the invoked tradition in a way which presented themselves as kind of reenacting the tradition, of their parents and grandparents. They're very much integrated into the in terms of how they constructed tradition. One of the things that's very interesting, engaging with diversity, and because Megan asked questions about that, what about the residence placement policies? And she found out 2 of them had black roommates and things, and what to think of it, etc. And they saw Stellenbosch and they saw their residents actually as places which were very forward-looking, even though 80% of students in residence were white. They saw us as very forward-looking, and what they did, they compared it with their schools. as kind of reference points. And also when the parents were there, that since the parents have been there, it's become much more diverse, and the schools were more, we said, much more traditional Afrikaans. So it's all Stellenbosch as offering this opportunity for diversity, producing diversity. And then also, interestingly too, making rights about race and its absence. Again, that's something we haven't, one of the themes about race, about the way in which race is often like the elephant in the sitting room, and where's the elephant? It's there, and it's kind of the thing with the absence which explains things, and because they talked about the roommates and some of them not being able to integrate as well, and one of the roommates wanted to go off and leave, and kind of the sort of, and she's asking, why do you think that is, and said, well, maybe it's the culture they come from, and so using that terminology but not using race, and they're not used to coming to places like this where there's a lot of people around and things, and so that was kind of really interesting, making sense of what they're saying. But then, just finally, I just want to end up with one. This is the final thing. She looks at about three or four residences, but this one was very different from the first one. This was the one which is characterized by mixing, this 40% white people, the rest colored people, black people. And it's also symbolically constructed, very interestingly, as a modern residence, as a kind of, and the people that she interviewed constructed it as a modern, which is very, very interesting. Again, she gave this, literature summary of the racial dynamics, and the themes. One of the things she found, there's a lot of humor in this group. Okay, it consisted of a mixture of people from different race backgrounds, and also gender as well. There was about 6 people in the group, and one of the things that they did right at the beginning was to take the piss out of tradition, the sort of and particularly constructions of tradition which inform orientation practices, okay, in the other residences. So running up and down your Stellenbosch mountain with a goat's head in your hand or whatever, and they're just bursting out laughing as they spoke about this, and it was actually quite funny reading it, because they're just laughing all the time, and Megan making jokes about what goes on in the other residents, and particularly about the male residences in a way which almost impinged their masculinity. These tough macho men, running around with horse sticks in their legs, and bursting out laughing, as if they're not real men. Actually, it just shows how pathetic they are, and those kind of connotations, and I think it's felt quite empowering as well, to experience something like that. So humour was used all the time, but what they weren't doing, I think this was very important, they weren't ridiculing Stellenbosch. They saw this very much as their space, and actually constructed themselves as superior to those in the bastions, traditionally the bastions of white privilege and prestige, the residences, the high stakes residences. They saw themselves actually superior. That these people were living in the past, they weren't modern, they engaged in these antiquated, ridiculous rituals and things. So Megan argues is developing an alternative view of Stellenbosch, as opposed to Lita's view. And what was very funny also is great deal of self-mockery in this, because they told a lot of stories about when they first came to Stellenbosch and how the parents had warned them, you mustn't go out, you stick in your room all the time, all these wars and things, you just keep your distance from them, and you can stay in your room for 3 years and work really hard, and as long as you pass, then that's great. And they just laughed at this and how ridiculous it was, and that was really, I think really refreshing in many ways, because I mean, in hindsight, they were able to. These were stories of mocking the parents, even mocking themselves. In hindsight, which makes sense, but suggesting that in fact, they felt quite sort of integrated now, and then issues around scarfing as well, with key ones. Scarfing being used. Right. Thanks.
So it's so to complete.
Okay, scarfing, as you probably know, is a sort of when one residence invites the other, a male resident invites a female resident invites a male resident, and for a social event, and hooking up in a way with the opposite sex. And it's particularly important if you have residences which are single sex, how do you actually get together with opposite sex? And so this is one way of kind of doing that. And people from the other, white men from the other residents tended to walk past, and they weren't racist, particularly they said hello and nodded heads. But the effect of that was to make them feel quite marginalised. And what was interesting is that the roommates of these students, the white roommates of these students, had no idea that that was the case. And so, but this came out in the discussions and things, in those discussions. Okay, so I think that this is a very good example of participatory forms of research which needs to inform transformation plans, which I think breaks down actually the division between research and teaching, because a lot of teaching and learning goes on in these things, and also that teaching needs to address, I think, students much more as researchers. Okay, and right.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Due to our technical glitches in the middle, we don't have that much time for questions. So what I'm going to do is just gather one round of questions. So Rob, please write down. And there won't be time for a second round, and Rob can respond. So invite hands now. Okay, Fernanda, I see one. Kiers, 2. Joanne, 3. Others? Thank you, 4. Okay, Fernanda.
Hi, Rob. Thank you for the talk, and thanks for Ben's picture, by the way. I never thought we could use to show a project next to shift movement. Rob, I'm here thinking, and since you brought Ben to the discussion, okay, I'm going to try to be quick, but I have an example this morning of something that happened with Ben. He was wearing this Peter Pan costume, right? And Ben, by the way, is the little boy that's so this morning he had to dress for Kira, and he was wearing this Peter Pan costume, and he looked in the mirror and said, there's a problem, Mom. I don't look like Peter Pan. And I thought, well, maybe it's because the costume is a bit different. Or he said, no, I don't look like Peter Pan. It's the problem with me, because Peter Pan looks different. And so the reason I thought about that example is because coming from Brazil, and I developed the issues of representation and race, and the serious issue of not seeing oneself represented in, let's say, media, arts, anyway. That most of the time we deal with race, but in ways that they're not easy to sort of, they're not tangible, or visible. So I don't know if I would call them construction in that sense, right? Because construction, I feel like every time you bring construction, I think of something that makes me think of agency, or something that is conscious, or something that there is a moment which you can think and construct something, or there's a kind of mediation there that sometimes when you think of race, and being Brazilian and being from a country that we don't speak of race in such explicit terms, it's also ideological that we don't see it, we don't construct race at all sometimes, even though we live in a racist country like Brazil. So that's my challenge to you. How do we think of race? Not think, because thinking is already something that can imagine an object. But how can we deal with something that is not visible, not always conscious, and not always, like, we don't always have the agency to I don't know, to be able to change. So in our practice of research or teaching, how do we deal with this thing? Because you mentioned the elephant in the room. I mean, there is something there that we can't talk about, but how can we bring this up, or is it important to make it into something visible if it's not always such?
Thanks. Yes?
Rob, right? Thanks a lot. And for your article and what you guys at the end that we're going to discuss later on help you to understand things bit more. But what I would like to ask you is about the difference between your research and that Megan was doing. In terms of both were participatory, yours was clearly very much directed towards transformation in a teaching situation, whereas Megan wanted to know more about what goes on in the residences. It seems from what you tell us that that one was less consciously and less directly focused on transforming the group. So, but the benefit of that approach is to learn more from the people, to get closer to the experience, to have a thicker description, get closer to people's experience. But would you say that there was also a strong transformative element in the fact that people met, that were discussing these issues? You seem to make that claim. So how do you think about a more focused aim of transforming in the one context and the other? Should Megan then perhaps have gone further in terms of confronting people with the absurdity of the racial ideas that you have done in the class situation?
Yeah, no, thanks for the talk. It was really interesting. I really enjoyed it.
That's the computer as well.
Yeah. And now I've got my own copy of the slides. So.
Right.
I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this question. I guess, I mean, I'm also very interested in participatory approaches to research and teaching, and I've done a lot of that myself. And if university were to take seriously some of the things that you're saying, it would be quite revolutionary in terms of a lot of things about how the university is structured, how even the town of Stellenbosch is structured and things like that. And that's the exciting part of it. But for me, as someone who's worked with these kinds of approaches a lot, one of the very difficult things is how you help people to be able to do it. And I'm just wondering if you have anything to say about that. Like, what is it that, in your experience, is helping students to go from seeing themselves as being someone who sits in a classroom to receive something from a teacher, to being an active participant in their own education and in research? Because I'm interested in what the systems are that are in place in the university. What are the things that are limiting that within the university setting?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Very interesting. I like the fact that you used the example of the alien. And I'd like to talk about the alien as maybe our kids. The alien as somebody who hasn't actually constructed race or has an understanding of how this affects him or her, or maybe wants to understand the importance of education of race in this or all that. And in this case, I'm thinking about the kids. And what comes to mind now is a story about this four white boys who were conducting an initiation with a black fellow student, and they're using the room to initiate, and they collected all this, such activities on this black student. And for me, that's a problem of the alien. That the alien that is supposed to be coming to ask what is race. But the alien itself seems to have its own understanding of what race is, judging by the actions of the alien. So I guess, are we ever going to stop talking about race, or is there a moment or an event in life where race does not really matter? Because we said so many things about race. So I guess if the aliens are the ones who are actually engaging in this kind of activities, that means by the time the alien comes to ask the question, the bus might have gone.
Okay, any last questions? Speak now. Okay, Rob?
Thanks. So, Fernanda, I think your example, Ben, was a really interesting one, very powerful. I think that demonstrated that agency. That's how I would see agency. I mean, definitely agency. That's and I find that quite striking, actually. I think that I do work with ideas of agency, and I think one of the things that I think we need to think about in relation to agency, which is often not touched upon but by critical writers, and that is particularly those writers who are influenced by Foucauldian approaches, which almost, I think, sometimes deny agency in a way, but by attributing everything to discursive practices, and in ways which see individuals simply as the products of discursive practices, and who feel that it's kind of okay to give, in order to explain why people might be so invested in ideas about race, all they have to do is present a kind of discursive analysis, and which doesn't really engage with investments. Just the discourses that have been powerful in the past, and Foucault, I mean, could be criticised along these grounds. I mean, towards before he died, he started to take agency much more seriously, I think. And what I want to put forward is the idea of investment, in subject positions. Why people take, what is it in them, to pick up on certain subject positions and certain discourses. So why are people so invested in the idea of discourse of race, for example, and different kinds of discourse of race? But there's some, and that's really important, because if we don't say, it's quite, I think it's quite rational, for people to work with quite essentialist versions of race, and see the world through quite essentialist versions of race in a society where things are heavily essentialized, where and people are divided in very essentialized, polarized ways in terms of race. It makes sense, actually. And in order to explain, this often people are. I know one of the speakers is going to be speaking, Jerry Moraine, in a few weeks' time. That one of his concerns is about, well, how does race still continue as an important discursive phenomenon in the post-apartheid era, and when there's no society which is officially proclaiming racializing people in certain ways, and basically his position is well, it's been produced by discursive practices, like form fitting, which people are required to do, and I think that's really problematic, because it's almost treating people, we know best. With that race is a kind of is an illusion. It doesn't really exist at all. The problem with societies is because we think racially. If we stop thinking racially, then the problem will go away. There's a problem of materialized, racialized inequalities. That's what the problem is, and people and actually thinking in terms of race. It's not surprising people think in terms of race and define themselves in terms of race, living in a society like that. So, so I think that I associate that with agency, actually. So rather than pathologizing people and saying, well, they're dominated by these discourses and they can't think properly, projecting false consciousness onto them, and we need to take, well, actually, they're quite rational thinkers, and that's to do with agency. So that's how I understand agency. Okay, here's the point, but. But yeah, I think that's a really important point to raise, actually, and in a way, I mean, Megan's work was much more sustained. The work that we did was sort of focused. I mean, it's a bit around how people's interests and aspirations and things, but it was mainly focused around how they saw Stellenbosch University, and we only went on for 2 or 3 days. We conducted research, so it's quite short, and in a way, one of the things that lacked and missed out on is the kind of research, the very deep research that Megan was doing, which provided very rich context. And I really like Megan's research, partly because it treats diversity with the seriousness it needs to be treated with. That so often diversity is defined as being researching black people, coloured people, etc. But white people were very, you can't be diverse without being diverse in relation to the other. And so white people were very central in this. And I think that, I mean, that kind of research, that participatory research, was very important. I mean, Megan was putting questions onto the table around some differences, actually, which people hadn't articulated, hadn't realised that existed within the friendship groups, and around issues to do with race and marginalisation, which some people felt and other people hadn't noticed, and things like this, even though they were friendship groups. And not in a way that was trying to catch them out, but in a way which was really, they were actually quite interested to know about themselves. People learned from the process of participating in focus group discussions. And so it really, these kind of forms of research, participating forms of research, really raise questions. Is this research we're doing, or is it teaching and learning? Yes, it's very interesting, I think. Yeah, about what structures are in place, and to kind of and how to take on processes of trying possibilities of then encouraging people and students to engage in transformative practices and things like this. And I mean, I think that it's a difficult in the university, but I think one of the things I was thinking about this actually, that when I'm teaching, that I think sort of works quite a bit, is to talk about the problems and limitations of living in an environment which is still quite racialized, and what you're missing out on, okay, by not participating in and hanging about. You know, in the first exercise I did with students, I imagine, was so surprised and really enjoyed that exercise, where interviewing someone with different backgrounds and so playing upon that and saying that we've got an opportunity here. It's a mixed university in lots of different ways, and quite different, very interestingly, from people, particularly from some of the more affluent students, their home backgrounds, which are much less mixed in many ways. And so there's opportunities here, and good education, good university education is not just about getting on with the sort of academic work, but also it's about making friends, and learning from people in a much broader way, and outside the purely academic work. And so I think that so presenting a course on race in these terms, and not putting people on guilt trips and things like this, but saying these are opportunities which can be opened up for you. I think that can work quite well actually. And I'm not, I haven't sort of I mean, just in conversation with people, that people see that as kind of as it's not. I mean, one person said that last time that she liked the course because it didn't make you feel you're walking on eggshells when you talk about race, and I think it's almost presented very positively. The people are not going to be criticised for being white or privileged or anything like that. It's not about getting people. Things like guilt is a very dangerous emotion, I think, to produce, so I think it's sort of about trying to break down in a way the sort of open up. So very positively, open up possibilities. So it's like in critical thinking, like homophobia, dealing with homophobia, for example, in education, a pedagogical issue. Look at the way that homophobia polices, what men can do and what women can do as well. There's so many things that men can't do for fear of being called gay. They can't go around with girls as friends because otherwise they can't show too many emotions and feelings, things like this. And I think the same thing with race actually. Look at the problems that race produces. But I don't think I've answered your question. But anyway, just finally about the alien kids, and stop talking about race. How can we? I mean, that is, and I think yes, that's a really important ideal to hold on to. And that's what we should be talking about all the time. The idea of a non-racial society. But I think also, that it's not. We shouldn't sort of romanticize it in terms of our kids are growing up. Well, we're all like this. The kids are like adults as well, and they become racialized as adults. And there's a very good study by Rachel Bray and Biskins and Seekings, and where they look at the 3 areas in the Western Cape, highly racialized areas, and find that the children being born and brought up in those areas have 12-year-old children, no living memories of apartheid or anything, make very strong racial identifications, and also construct the other areas as the coloured areas and white areas. White people don't, and coloured people construct the black area as dangerous spaces, so they draw kind of bits right in, and that's at the age of 12. People developing those, but you, in a way, this requires a whole range of changes. But that's but you're right. I think one last thing is that
Can I ask a final question? Sorry, I know you're
Megan's a comment.
No, I mean, just the issue of language, because it didn't come up as much, only in the quote that you showed from the young guy from Kayamati, and also thinking about the thing that happened last weekend where Afrikaans was said, you don't belong here, you don't speak Afrikaans, and just wondering if language also plays a role when you're talking about, teaching, and the extent to which language plays a role in terms of either promoting or, highlighting the sense of otherness and so.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's really interesting because I teach, I can't speak Afrikaans as well, and so I teach. I have slides in Afrikaans and slides in English, and it's quite good because it's taught me to produce good slides, and that's quite liberating because it frees you up to talk and talk. The slides are on there, and you can read that if you want, but I can just talk and talk in participatory ways. But it's I don't know. I mean, I always feel that quite apologetic in a way, in that some of the slides I haven't translated, and also not into Afrikaans, but also into Xhosa and Zulu and things like that. And I mentioned that too, and I think that's kind of important to do that. I don't know. I can't really say enough about it. But in that example, of the people in the Kaimati, I think language, can be used, I think, as synonymous with race in a way, but I think they were using that there as just feeling, it might have been used in a sense like that, but also they would just feel, symbolic of how, it might have been a polite way, or it could have been a polite way of saying that to me, that they would find going to Stellenbosch really difficult, just there's some language, and certainly, that might have been how they felt about it as well, because they had friends. They mentioned they had friends who did go, and the people code switched all the time, and they found it really difficult to keep up with it.
Okay, unfortunately, we have to bring this to an end. There is a reading group happening in 20 minutes, but before we do a final cut to Rob, I just want to announce that next week we have a seminar with Suparno and Sophia Oldfield, which is about racial geographies after apartheid. So it ties very nicely to what Rob's been talking about. Thank you all for coming, and thanks again to Rob for